This is Donna with More Than a Review, and I'm excited to have Doug with us today. He has written a book, Unintentional, and it's about how screens secretly shape your desires and how you can break free. And how we would probably say that is we are on our screens way too much, and there's a reason behind that. And so we're going to talk about that today and what we can do. It's not just a book of criticizing us about being on our phones or condemnation. It's about like what can we do both to be off our phones and what can we do with our lives. And I just love that. So Doug, let's start off by sharing just a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Well, by profession, I'm a software developer. I've been a software developer for most of my life. I'm also a dad of four daughters, four grown daughters, and we recently empty nesters with my wife and I, and I'm also a lifelong Bible student. And so I've been looking at the world through those lenses for some time, and I noticed that the impact the screens were having, especially since the release of the smartphone, the iPhone came out in 2007. And so as I watched the effect that was having on all of us, including myself, I became very concerned.
Yeah. So when you became concerned, like what did you do to kind of start? I mean, you wouldn't immediately go to a book, I'm guessing.
No,
so like
not at
what
all.
research did you start with?
Sure. Well, I mean, started just by anecdotal, I suppose, just looking at how am I feeling. I was when I got my first phone, kind of a late adopter in 2010. I felt myself being pulled in. Checking my email first thing in the morning, checking Twitter. Just my last waking moment, why am I feeling the need to always check it all the time? And then looking at everybody else. And so then I started looking into what was going on behind the scenes and learned that there were things happening behind the scenes that were making the devices intentionally have it for me.
Yeah. And so how do they do that? Like how is it intentional?
Well, so it's multifaceted, but the companies that have become the largest companies that you can think of, the Apples and Facebooks and Googles and so on, they actually hire behavioral psychologists to apply techniques that really exploit weaknesses in our psychological makeup. And so they know what it means when they add a like button and how that social proof will cause us to want to check more and more and more. They know every aspect of everything you can imagine is researched, tested on thousands and millions of people in order to keep people hooked as long as possible.
And I think for me personally, that makes me, not feel good that they've done that, but at least make me not feel like weak, I think.
Right.
That I can't put the phone down, that there's a reason you can't. Like
That's
there is
right.
something behind the scenes that is causing that, either addiction or that need to just check it one more time.
Right,
So,
absolutely. That's the thing that really kind of welled up inside of me. Where the impact and kind of the call of God that I felt was, I just felt like someone needs to do something about this. And there are other books that have been written, but I just felt like my voice really, really focusing on the impact of the industry and then drawing people to a better path would make that difference. But it just, righteous indignation, just kind of, I don't like to be manipulated. Nobody wants to be manipulated. It just made me mad.
Exactly. Yeah, that was my first reaction too. I'm like, okay, now I'm definitely going to overcome it now that I know they're trying to manipulate me.
Right.
So let's talk about what advice do you give people now that let's say we read the parts and we become aware, then what's the next step?
Well, so yes, developing that awareness is critical. Moving from there, learning the strategies, I think, is really important, and just to understand that there are practices that are being applied, and there's a whole field of study, so you don't have to go really deep, but just understanding it's not an accident that Netflix has an autoplay feature. That's designed to cause binge watching. You're not binge watching because, those kind of things. So learning those things. But then the first positive step I encourage people to take is to really cast a vision for what their life could be like if they were not necessarily spending so much time on their phones. What are they missing out on? And part of my book is leading people through that process of really understanding there's more to your life. You're here for a purpose. God made you for a reason. And if you're missing out on that, you're not living the life you really are intended to live. Yeah. So I encourage that first step would be cast that vision for what life could be like.
Wow, that is good. So I heard you also talking to someone about the habits. And that you replace it with something else. So tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So as you walk through the journey, and my book is a Christian book, so it's a Christ-focused path because that's my story. I've overcome things only really by the grace of God. So I really put that heavily into it. So as I walk people through that, later in the process, I show that because the phones are habit forming, and all devices, they're designed to be habit forming, you can't just stop a habit cold turkey, right? It's just like, well, I'm just not going to do that anymore. We have to understand how habits work and then replace those habits with the positive habits that we want to have. So it's learning that what's triggering you and then deciding in advance then, okay, I'm going to do something else instead.
So your book's been out for a little bit. So have you received any kind of feedback from the readers yet?
I have, thankfully, yes. I'm starting to hear people that are really making significant changes. They really feel impacted by it. I can't tell you how wonderful and exciting it is to think that it's been a 2.5-year journey getting it published, and then now to think that it really is making a difference in people's lives. So yeah, it's fantastic. That's the best part ever.
Yeah. Well, a lot of times as an author, you never get to hear that from them,
Sure.
even though it really happens. And so that is kind of a blessing when you actually get to hear it.
It's huge. Yes.
So I would encourage everyone, when you buy the book and you do make changes, go to his website and let him know and share your stories. And I think it encourages other people. I mean, people love to hear the success story, and if they can do it, then I can do it, and
right.
Just the little steps. So as we close out, what is something that you would want to leave the listeners with on, like, just what can they do for this epidemic?
Sure. Well, the real key thing, I think, is to understand that if you're not being intentional with your life, someone else is. And you do not want to go through your life and end up at the end of your life thinking, wow, I ended up doing things that I was being led and manipulated into. So learn about that, and then learn to put things into practice that may be super countercultural. You may be the only person you know that are not doing certain things, but at the end of your life, you're going to be so much more grateful that you did.
Yeah. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.